There's so many ways we can collaborate with fungi for the environmental solutions we need. And it's so untapped. It's so early. It's such a massive white space. And I'm so into the new frontier and imagination, creativity.
Hey, Karl, how's it going?
Things are going great, Erum. It's like we're racing towards the end of the year. There's a lot of exciting things going on. And our podcast has had some very exciting news. Why don't you start talking about it, Erum?
Yes, well, a lot goes on here on the Grow Everything podcast. We talk about biotech across different industries, but also things that are on the bleeding edge. So we were talking to Professor Michael Levin of Tufts University, and we had this incredible episode with him where he talked about so many intersections between consciousness and living materials and life and decentralized nervous system. So we're talking about octopus and what does that look like? And that episode got a lot of love across all of our channels, specifically on YouTube, and a lot of comments as well. And people love Michael Levin. I mean, he is someone you can just listen to for hours because he just takes you on a journey through biology, through molecules, how they interact. And I was really happy to see that there was this conversation that was happening. What did you think, Karl?
I was really happy because clearly there's a lot of Michael Levin fans. And there was a couple of comments on YouTube where the people were very much fans of the way that we interviewed him. So that made me feel really good. We did a really good job interviewing him. Someone said we provided the clearest explanation of what Michael does. So that is really great. And then, every great comment, our comments are worthless unless you get some critics. We had a few of those as well. And that's always a fun time.
Yes, that's when you know you make it, when you get some critics, when you get some naysayers or whoever else, but the dialogue is happening, and that's what's most important.
Exactly. A couple of other things that we wanted to mention before we get into today's episode. Erum, you flagged Ashley Beckwith, who had been on the podcast before. You noticed that she posted something on LinkedIn. Why don't you talk about that?
Yes. So Ashley Beckwith is the founder CEO of Foray Biosciences, and we had an amazing episode with her. She talks a lot about plant cultivation and how we can create seeds to create trees versus having to extract trees or use them in the ways that we have been traditionally, just chopping them down and growing it. There's a lot of issues with monoculturing forests where it's just one tree versus biodiversity. And she has a very interesting platform. And when we first interviewed Ashley, I was still trying to wrap my head around what does Foray do? And there's a lot of companies have their wet lab portion of what they're doing here in the biotech world, and then their software version. So Ashley Beckwith posted a video on LinkedIn explaining both sides of the coin, the wet lab and then the digital lab, the silicon lab. I don't know how you want to talk about it. And I just wanted to highlight that having founders or leaders of a company get on a video and show how their products work and getting behind the scenes, getting in the lab is such a great way to highlight a company. It sounds like a big lift, but it can't be in today's world, right? All of our phones are cameras. It just takes some time to do. And I want to encourage more people to put videos out there explaining what they're working on. I think it's a great thing. I learned so much more by watching Ashley in her element. She was in her lab. She was holding up plates. She was going on a laptop and showing what her user experience of the software looks like and how she was using it, how she was inquiring. And I was like, yes, great job, Ashley.
I agree with that. It's like, I know that when you're on Instagram or on TikTok, you're scrolling through lots of videos, but I will always stop for a scientist's video. And I do when I have TikTok on my phone, which is not all the time. I always look at Sci Talk or Science Talk or Biotech Talk or Symbio Talk, because I want to see who's out there putting out videos, because that is how people consume content. And it doesn't mean that it's the only kind of content, that kind of short form content. I think there's a lot of room for longer form videos. I'd like to see more of those from founders, but I really appreciate this video that Ashley has posted. I'll be watching it a couple of times because I just want to see how she did it. And it's something that we're doing more of too. I mean, we've been posting shorts on YouTube. We've been posting our full episodes on YouTube, and it's being very successful. Last week, we kind of kicked off a series about mycelium with Laura Menard of GOB. But Erum, let's talk about how that leads us into today's episode.
Yes. So yes, Laura Menard of GOB. Wow, that was an incredible episode. I just love talking to her because not only is she creating a great product made of mycelium, but she's a great science storyteller. She knows how to sell without being salesy. And it was a great conversation. And yes, I kicked off this conversation about mycelium and fungi and this exploration into the fungal kingdom, material as a platform. But today's episode is a special one where we feature the founder and winners of the Future is Fungi. And I will tell you that it is fungi all the way down. So, and fungi has been making the news. So let's just kick off a little bit with something that you shared with me, Karl, about MIT chemists creating fungal compounds that can treat brain cancer as like a moonshot discussion of fungi. And then we can talk a little bit more about today's special episode.
I mean, here's the thing. It's like we have in the past had Eben Bear of Ecovative on, and I think Eben and the Ecovative team have inspired a lot of people. They've shown how versatile fungi can be for creating construction materials or alternatives to a material like leather. So it's always interesting to see how other people are using fungi, for example, in environmental remediation to break down waste. And so as we were going into this episode, I got this news from MIT. The news was that these researchers at MIT found a new form of a compound called verticillin A, which is a fungal compound that has been used since the 1970s for protection against pathogens. And they're very difficult to synthesize. I mean, we talk about how challenging it can be to do chemical synthesis, and that's why we turn to a lot of biomanufacturing. But this lab back in 2009, they found a way to make a similar compound. I'm reading like how complicated this thing is. It's like 10 rings and 8 stereogenetic centers. It's too complicated to really get into. But what they found was you can synthesize this using mycelium. And so that increases the possibility of producing this molecule and actually getting it into the clinic to treat these kinds of cancers. So it's really another demonstration of the power of fungi.
Yeah. I think a lot of therapeutics are made through chemical synthesis. And so to be able to make a compound synthetically can be very challenging, can require a lot of energy, require different types of solvents and everything. But to have a living thing like fungi or bacteria to make complex molecules, they are machines, they are factories, and that we're going to talk a lot about that on today's episode.
Today, we're doing an episode that's kind of a 3-in-1 episode where we're going to be highlighting the Future is Fungi Award, which is a global platform and launchpad for frontier fungal startups and science entrepreneurs leveraging fungi to solve some of humanity's biggest challenges. This award was started by Susanne Gløersen, who has a mission to accelerate novel fungi innovations worldwide as the new frontier in biotech. She's investing in trailblazing fungi startups with the Fungi Collective and Fungi VC, and we're super excited to have Susanne on to talk about the Future is Fungi Award. Let's let Susanne kick it off to talk about the Future is Fungi Award, and then we're going to do an interview with the winner and the runner-up of the Future is Fungi Award.
Susanne Gløersen, welcome to the Grow Everything podcast. I am very excited to have you on. I know Karl is. It's been some time since we've been speaking about this. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you both.
Yeah, excited about fungi. We're going to have some fun with fungi. And the future is fungi. This is the platform that you've established. Not only do you have this Future is Fungi Award, and we're going to have the winner and runner-up on this episode, but you also have a podcast. You've been an advocate about this. It's not an animal. It's not a plant. It's this incredible living material. So I wanted to continue the conversation that we had. I believe it was either at the BioFab Fair or we had a conversation when you did an event during Climate Week with the All True Institute. And we were talking about our fascination with fungi and what is it? We had this whole conversation about, okay, did fungi really establish consciousness in our early hominid ancestors, the whole stoned ape theory? But it's much more than that, although that's a lot, you know. Helping us with consciousness is a good thing. Thank you, fungi. But what else? I mean, tell me, like, where did this fascination and interest and loyalty to fungi start? How did it establish?
Yeah, so I've always been in sustainability, in finance, and pushing the envelope for change from within, moving capital to more sustainable innovations. And I've always been very fascinated by the super frontier innovations, solar foods, producing proteins out of the air. Wow. And always been very entrepreneurial. And then I discovered fungi. It was actually a Danish friend who wanted to do an alternative protein company 7 years ago. That was super early, quite early. So that was the first track into this queendom and kingdom. And then 3 years ago, that was the second accelerated, seeing there's so many ways we can collaborate with fungi for the environmental solutions we need. And it's so untapped. It's so early. It's such a massive white space. And I'm so into the new frontier and imagination, creativity. So, and then I also saw that it lacked, even though mycelium is a network, it lacked its own ecosystem to help accelerate these innovations. So that's why I jumped out of the role in finance to build what I refer to as a fungi universe of different initiatives. When you come into this queendom, you never get out. It's a rabbit hole, right? They choose you. There's no way back. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So you've built this Future is Fungi Award to be a global launch pad for fungal innovation. What gaps are there in existing biotech or sustainability ecosystem that you specifically were trying to fill? And why did you think that fungi was the key to filling those gaps?
First of all, I saw that there's this incredible potential of fungi to solve environmental challenges. This is biotech that we haven't utilized more. And we know that McKinsey says that 60% of input for the global economy can come from biology. And when you have this huge white space, of course, we have to accelerate the innovations that are possible there and also inspire to new innovations we haven't yet seen, right? There's so many novel innovations here. And then I also saw the need for more awareness raising, right? When I say fungi, people are like, what? On my pizza or on the wall or even magic mushrooms. So awareness raising, I saw the need for, of course, backing these innovators with resources, funding, and commercializing science. There's so much game-changing science in research that is just stuck there. And lastly, that's why I wanted to building a quite diverse platform. We need to bring together scientists, startups, corporates, investors, and the wider innovation ecosystem, really bridging those needed to help catalyze these innovations. So that's what I'm trying to do with this larger platform.
This has been an incredible journey for you. I've seen some of the early mentions of the Future is Fungi Award. That was like the big project that you're working on. And here you are on the other side of it. Looking back, you had this pool of 187 applications from 59 countries for this award. So I'd love to know what trends or ideas surprised you the most, and what does that tell you about where fungal innovation is headed?
And that's the beauty with the Global Award, where we welcome all types of innovations, right? And specifically highlight novel innovations, right? How can fungi blaze a new trail for innovations needed? So I really get to see everything that is moving in fungal innovation across the world, especially what's on the cutting edge. And now we've done 2 rounds of the award, so there has been some developments since the first award. First, I can mention some of the cool innovations we've seen, and then also some reflections on, well, what this says about the space. Again, I'm very into what is super novel we haven't seen before. So, of course, I have to give credit to the winners, Michroma, replacing synthetic colors for food with fungal-based colors. I'm sure many don't know that we eat petrochemicals, or as I say, we eat shit. Who knew? And it's linked to cancer. It's linked to cancer. And yes, fungi can produce colors. And we also had Michael Levin with surfactants, for now replacing less sustainable bio-based surfactants. And for those who don't know, surfactants are what makes cleaning products or cosmetics or even food bind together or foam or clean. You can make fungal-based surfactants. And lastly, diapers with higher raw technologies, breaking down diapers. And then we also saw super novel things like firefighting foam from fungi, because, the current firefighting foam leaves a lot of chemicals inside houses or in the soil, and we can collaborate with fungi to also impacting rainfall. That was a US company impacting rainfall for farmers because they impact the formation of clouds that gathers around fungal spores. And one more is, and again, I love the creativity. There was packaging for cosmetics that changes color when the cosmetic isn't working anymore, when you can't use it. And it's not, it didn't get to the top. We look at, we look at environmental significance of the innovations, but it shows the diversity. And back to your question, Adam, on what we're seeing. So I would say the first year, there was also a lot of focus on micro-remediation, which is another key passion areas for mine. Fungi is a decomposer and cleaner in nature, and we have so much polluted soil. 55% of soil in Europe is polluted or is degraded. We have chemicals, PFAS, and we can remediate with fungi. So that was quite present in the first award. We had a myco battery winning. Now, which I have expected, we saw electronics in the first award. We saw that now as well, a lot of agriculture applications. But I've been expecting to see more applications across these everyday products, as I talked about, right? So colors or surfactants or fragrances. And there'll be so much more this year of surfactant-based companies. So that were some takeaways. I just want to say again about the winner that you guys are interviewing in the US now with the ban on the red 3 color. Things are really shifting. And now we have General Mills saying that they're phasing out chemical colors. So what I love with the award, why I also set up is it's shout out to awareness raising about things we don't know about, right? That we eat it, as I said. And also fungi can produce extreme colors. Fungi can make surfactants. Fungi can break down diapers. So there's a lot of awareness raising with the award as a platform.
Yeah, that's amazing. Some people still see fungi as a niche or fringe. How do you make the case to corporations, investors, and even public institutions that fungi deserve to be considered a core technology, not just a green novelty?
Yeah, when people say, oh, fungi, that's nichey. If it's investors, I say, first of all, fungi can address all the environmental challenges. So let's start there. It can address innovations for climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, moving from a linear petri-based system to bio-based circular one, and pollution. And then system change across sectors. There are so many sectors that can use this, construction industry, food, agriculture, various materials, energy. I mean, it's just so diverse in terms of sectors. It's definitely not a niche that some people refer to. And for, investors and corporates, this is system change where we're moving to more bio-based system. As I mentioned, the reference to McKinsey, 60% of input can come from biology. And in that shift, fungi is massively untapped. It's an incredible, there's so much potential. We've only mapped 4 to 10% of fungi globally. So the next, materials or penicillin can come from these 96% else. And how exciting is that the biggest innovations and breakthroughs will most likely we have in front of us. So where bacteria is more exploited, fungi, the kingdom and queen of fungi is like, do you want to go to the North Pole and be the first ever? It's open for everybody. And so again, we see back to, the corporates. L'Oreal, they communicated a target to go 95% bio-based by 2030. And there's a lot of companies moving to much more phasing out petrochemicals. And I mentioned also General Mills and these companies on synthetic dyes. So this is where we're heading. And we're heading to bioeconomy. And there's such a massive untapped potential of fungi that we're now discovering.
So yeah, I mean, you have your finger on the pulse of fungi. And here on the podcast, we talk about all sorts of different microorganisms and plants and bacteria. What positions fungi as better at making certain things? Because we know bacteria makes colors and surfactants and other things. We'd love to just hear your thoughts on some advantages of fungi.
We've talked about this, that it's important to, we need everybody. We need bacteria, we need plants, or we need algae. So fungi and friends, as we say, and they often, you can merge them and they can collaborate and then you see magical things. But some advantages is, the high capacity to produce proteins. So the high titer, that's one which gives a lot of opportunities that bacteria, for example, can't do in the same way. So that's one.
All right, that's great, Susan. When it comes to biomanufacturing, and Erum and I have been talking a lot about this, it's like people think that stainless steel is a solution. That's not always feasible. A lot of proteins are very complicated. It increases the cost when it comes to downstream processing. And I think that finding these alternate ways to produce certain proteins or organisms makes a lot of sense. And using fungi as a, let's say, bioreactor, seems like a natural. Yeah. If you had unlimited resources and influence, what's the one moonshot fungal innovation you'd love to see supported through the Future is Fungi Awards, and why?
So I'm quite imaginary myself. I often ask the question, we had a workshop on this, if you could save the world, what would you make? If you could save the world with fungi, what would you make? And I have a thing for giving fungi's role in the soil, being so connected, sending nutrients, and around 60% of biodiversity is in the soil. And it's a tough time for the microorganisms in the soil, and it's going downhill, but we don't always know how the status is in the soil. So I would love to see fungi as a biosensor in the soil to report back to humans about the quality and the prosperity of the microbes and the biodiversity in the soil. That's one. It will not, make it or break it for prosperous humanity for us all. So much comes from the soil. Our food, yes, we can also produce it in vertical farms, but we need to understand the state of our soil better. And instead of implementing artificial technology, we can collaborate with fungi as a biosensor. So that's one innovation. It's not a moonshot, but it's one innovation I would love to see. But it's cool when I run this experiment, this workshop with grown-ups and ask them, so what would you make with fungi if you could? It's so cool to have these people in their 40s and 50s like, you know what? I want to make a toilet out of fungi that eats the shit.
That's interesting.
Or a plane, or it's just, that's also mission of the Future's Fungi, kicking or sparking people's imagination of, what would you make with fungi? Because as we also saw from the first award, Visibuilt, incredibly novel founder, Lina and company, she makes a binder for asphalt production from fungi, replacing petrochemical-based bitumen as a binder, right? Which is so novel. And the asphalt industry would never think, you know what? We need to look at fungi as a binder. Nobody ever thought about that. She was jogging and then she was like, looked down and maybe we could use fungi as a binder. So it really shows that there's room for so much more new innovations we have never seen before.
Oh, wow. That just blew my mind. There's, yes, lots of creativity coming from people. You're seeing it. I do have just one follow-up thought or a question. I don't know where this is going to go, but, you mentioned that, your moonshot would really be looking at mycelium and how it could be used for soil remediation. And yes, there's toxins in soil, but there's also a lot of barren land that has been over-harvested, and then they just don't have any microbes. And then this idea of nutrient communication. I remember seeing like a documentary. It's probably the fungi documentary, the one with Paul Stamets on Netflix. But it was talking about how mycelium is a network and it's like the internet of the underground, and it's talking to the trees, and it's like trees can communicate with each other, and then bacteria, can participate in this too. And I feel like there's a lot to be discovered. This idea of nutrient communication is just incredible, because there's this X Prize for, I don't know if it's released yet, but Paul Diamandis was talking about it, on animal communication, and to be able to understand what, whales and different animals are saying, and like how do we interpret what other animals are saying. And when we're able to communicate with other animals and understand that, they are conscious beings, I hope that changes the game. Otherwise, we just all accept that we're like horrible people that just horrible species that just kills for nutrients, even though there's so many good alternatives.
I love that you bring that up. We have experts in the board, actually, and I visited Visioneering some weeks ago, and we talked about this prize. And for me, that was just, wow, it's so spot on, because I talked with Eben about, we look so much forward to being able to speak with fungi. I'm sure we will, and AI will help us. Eben and I in Ecovate, we think so. And yes, it will, change our relationship with nature. And that's also the goal behind the Future's Fungi, that we move to a nature-based system where we're in balance with nature and where we're respectfully interacting. That's why I talk about collaborating with fungi, not exploitation, this new frontier. But to your question, yes, speaking with animals and fungi, and there's a scientist called Andy Adamansky. He researched that fungi has a language of 50 words. So their signals are interpreted as 50 words. I mean, it's so fascinating. So this kingdom, we can't really understand how intelligent it is, and how it has such a central, as you said, Adam, central role in interacting with plants and other microbes, and weaving resources. So I really look forward to humans understanding more about this kingdom and also interacting with the living world.
That's great. Yeah. We're going to move into the part of the podcast where we ask some quick fire questions. I'll ask the first one, and then Erum will pick it up afterwards. You can answer as long as you'd like. But what's one misconception about fungi that you'd love to erase right now?
I would say that it's dangerous. It can be, but it can also be very nice.
Like everything. Everything's good and bad. Sugar can be good. Sugar can be bad.
Yeah.
What's the one quality you saw in this year's award winners that made you think, yep, this is the future of fungi?
I have to say, so many show such high degree of innovation capacity. So it's important to say that, yes, we have 3 top startups, but this is about all of them, right? We need all of them if we're to move in a more regenerative direction. So the capacity of novelty and innovation was incredible.
Amazing. What's one fungal superpower that you wish everyone knew about?
Yeah, I would say that it's a highly intelligent system without a center, without a core, right? And we're not used to, humans have a brain, but this system is, where is it coming from? How is it operating? Highly intelligent, no core, no center.
That's amazing.
Yes, that makes me think of our episode with Michael Levin and a decentralized intelligence system like octopus. Like octopus, they don't have a central brain. They're all decentralized. Their arms think for themselves. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
It's incredible. All right. Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you, Susanne, for all the work that you put in, all the partners you brought together for the Future is Fungi Award and your platform. You also have a podcast called the Future is Fungi Podcast, so easy to remember. So I recommend people listen to that as well. And next up, we're going to have the winner of the Future is Fungi, and then we'll have the runner-up. So we'll deep dive into those companies and why you picked them. So thank you so much for coming on the Grow Everything podcast.
And thank you for your great work.
Thank you, Susanne.
Amazing. Great conversation with Susanne Gløersen. And now here's our episode with Ricky Cassini of Michroma. Ricky was recognized by Forbes as a 30 under 30 and MIT's Innovators Under 35 for Latin America. And he got recognized for redefining how ingredients are created. And this is our world of biotech and bioindustrials.
So, Ricky is a former strategy consultant and professor of operations and logistics. So, he doesn't come from a traditional biotech background, but he has all of the knowledge and insight into using fungi to make colors and food dyes with biology. So, let's let Ricky take it away.
Ricky Cassini of Michroma, we are so thrilled to have you today on this special Grow Everything podcast episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor for me.
Yeah, we've been wanting to get you on for a while. I know you've been extremely busy. We have a lot of friends in common. Francisco Bucara introduced us recently. I know that you both have Argentina in common. And I think you maybe know that, like, I ended up moderating a panel at the Argentinian consulate here in New York City, and just have been a big fan of what Chroma has been doing in the food and color space. So let's get some background in terms of your relationship with fungi. What sparked the moment when you realized fungi could be more than mushrooms on a plate, but could be a foundation for a global regenerative movement?
We started in 2019, so a while ago. At the beginning, I didn't understand much about biotech. My background is on business, but I saw that there was a huge contradiction in the food industry. Consumers wanted natural ingredients, but natural ingredients weren't performing the way they should in order to solve the issues that food companies are having. So we saw an opportunity there, an opportunity where fungi could solve two problems with only one solution, replacing synthetic dyes that are very cheap, consistent, extremely stable, but still they are petroleum based, right? Plant based pigments or insect based pigments that are the natural ones that we are using, they break under heat or pH, and they come with major supply chain challenges. So we saw that gap. We saw a gap where the world needed natural colorants with industrial functionality, and we could provide them using our biotech platform based on fungi, solving that need, making it scalable, producing a product that people want in a very cost efficient and sustainable way.
Amazing. Amazing. I mean, like Carl said, we were so excited to have you on because we've been looking at this space of CPG products, especially in food. I loved how you said that there's a huge contradiction happening in food. That's something I wrote down here because you're right. Food's supposed to be making us healthy. Food is medicine, yet we're eating petrochemicals. Why are we doing that? And then, obviously formulating to make it taste delicious and addictive is also very contradictory. But colors that have been a topic of conversation, especially here in the United States recently, has been the topic of red dye 40. And your first product is Red Plus, which is more than a natural dye. So it's pH and heat stable. So you mentioned those were challenges with the plant and insect-based dyes. And it's built for real industrial food application. So what were your biggest hurdles in getting from promising fungal strain to an industry-ready bio pigment?
Great question, Erum. So the journey from a beautiful pigment on a plate or in nature to a reliable food ingredient is very long. And there are major hurdles. And I can mention a few. Engineering the right fungal chassis is not easy. Fungi can produce amazing molecules, but not at an industrial levels or not naturally at industrial levels. So we had to design our own chassis that could produce the target pigment in a very efficient way, cleanly and consistently. And then it's time to scale it up, right? Achieving real industrial scalability and stability is very important. Most natural breads fail under heat or acidic conditions, so selecting the right molecules is also important. And then making the fungi produce those molecules that you are looking for that will be used for extrusion processes, pasteurization, and complex pH environments that is required for the food industry. And as I mentioned, the scalability is also important. It's not the same producing a pigment on a 250 milliliters shake flask as succeeding in 50,000 liter bioreactors or industrial scale. So matching that performance at scale with the tighter purity, color behavior, shade that companies are looking for was a major technical milestone that our team managed to achieve. And then regulatory processes. Because it's natural, it doesn't mean that we can eat it. Providing novel molecules that have better pH, thermal stability for food applications means it also needs to go through a regulatory process that is very long, complex, and we need to make sure that it's safe for consumption. So that's the other big challenge that we have as producers of a novel color.
That's amazing, Ricky. I'm really curious because you're scaling production in what you guys call fungal biofactories. What is that exactly? And how do you ensure that those fungal biofactories are sustainable in terms of feedstock, energy, waste? How do you ensure that while still being competitive?
Great question, Carl. So when I started, I didn't know much about science. So I understood that we could have a product out of a fungi, and that product could be very scalable, could be consistent batch to batch. So we started using this term biofactory because we really believe that the fungi fermentation work can be a biofactory, and we can produce in a similar way synthetic dyes are produced, but we can produce natural dyes which consumers are looking for. But essentially, a fungal biofactory, it's a microbial production platform that we are actively engineering. A chassis fungus whose metabolism, pathways, fermentation behavior, we are shaping to produce these pigments with precision, consistency, and high yield. And scaling this platform isn't about having just more tanks or more resources because it wouldn't be efficient or cost competitive. It's about the deep technical work that we have to do as a team that is required to make biology and the process truly industrial and high yield. Those are the main issues. Then it comes to a breakdown of different topics from rewriting the fungal metabolism for performance, then building a fermentation process that matches the biology. We need to develop the downstream process to purificate the target compound, in this case, colors. And then, as I mentioned before, making the process very scalable to industrial scales that are 50,000 liters, 100,000 liters, or also 500,000 liters. And that's all on the technical side and what our team focuses every day and the job that I'm very proud of that they are doing. And then it's not only done on the technical side, it's also the partnerships to develop that industrial scale that we need. Because as a startup, it's very hard to build the capacity. So for us, it's also important to develop the partnerships that we are using to accelerate and fine tune at scale the process. And we are very proud also of our partners that are helping us go through that process.
Oh, yeah. You could have fooled me that you don't have a science background. It seems like you learned a lot over the years developing this company. It's incredible. And then you mentioned some partnerships. I mean, can you talk about your partnerships and what does that look like in terms of how they work with you in scaling? I know the fine tuning, but can you give us some examples?
Yeah. For example, this year we announced a partnership with CJ. CJ is a company from South Korea. They have the largest fermentation capacity in the world. They are experts on scaling up biology. They have several products in the market. They have a lot of capacity, a lot of R&D and development that we can leverage and basically put our process in their bioreactors, work with them to fine tune the process and generate synergy to scale and reach the thousands of tons that the food industry needs.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, I would love to know more about that. But I can understand in South Korea, they have a very strong fermentation capacity. The food and beverage industry, at least in the United States, it's a bit conservative when it comes to new innovation. And so I'm curious, how do you pitch fungi-derived colorants to manufacturers or even regulatory bodies who use synthetic dyes or plant-based pigments? How do you convince them that this is the opportunity and the innovation to go with?
Great question. And when we started, we led with performance and cost effectiveness because that's what moves the industry. Right now, there is a big change in the US with the phase out of synthetic dyes. So companies are taking the lead on replacing them with natural options. Right now, we don't have to convince them anymore that synthetic colors are not good for us, but they still know that they are very stable, consistent, very cheap. Plant-based natural dyes are often fragile in terms of supply chain. So our pitch is quite straightforward. What we are bringing to the market is better performing natural dyes in a much more cost efficient and scalable way, and more sustainable as well, which is a very nice side effect. And when manufacturers see the stability profile of Red Plus, conversations shift quickly, which is very nice. When they see how our colorant performs, provides a very nice shade of red that is very stable through extrusion, pasteurization, cooking, baking, and also they need to use a fraction of our color to generate the same effect on the matrix. When we compare it to beetroot, it's 50 times more powerful. So that's very surprising for them, but we still need to achieve not only the scale that they need, and that's why we are working with all these partners and make the process scalable, but also the regulatory approvals. And on that regulatory side, what we are trying to do is being very transparent. We are building our entire platform with regulatory frameworks in mind. Precision fermentation is already widely used to produce enzymes, vitamins, dairy proteins. So regulators really understand this category. So what it matters is that we have very well characterized strains, controlled fermentation processes, strong safety data, and rigorous documentation. Those are the key things that regulators are looking for. And right now, FDA, HHS are not only eliminating or phasing out synthetic dyes, but also accelerating the approval of novel colors, which is very exciting for us as well.
That's amazing. That's today. So let's talk about what things might look like in 5 to 10 years. How do you see fungal biofactories like the ones you guys have created fitting into a regenerative food supply chain, and or what needs to shift to make that real? Is it culture, regulation, supply chains? What needs to change for this to be so common that I can go to the store and just look at something that's red and know that the dye comes from someone like you?
Yeah, great question, Karl. I wasn't a fan of fungi or precision fermentation when we started, but I saw the value that these platforms can provide. I do believe that they will become core infrastructure of the next generation of ingredients, because right now we are producing synthetic dyes, but synthetic dyes, ingredients, flavors, fragrances that we don't want to consume anymore, but natural dyes are not produced in a very scalable way. And that gap can be filled with biotechnology and fungi and other microorganisms. So I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, microbes will power not only colors, but also flavors, fragrances, nutraceuticals, proteins as well, entirely new molecules that we are not even discussing right now. And that will also shift drastically the land that we need to use in order to produce natural pigments or natural flavors, the water use, the carbon footprint, because we can produce these dyes or compounds anywhere in the world. So it's going to be much better for the whole world, sustainability, but also in terms of supply chain, it's going to be much more reliable. And your other question was how to make it real. And we need regulatory clarity. I think that's evolving and that's changing fast, especially in the US, and the rest of the world is following. For example, Argentina, where I'm from, is also proposing a phase out and copying the same good measures that the US is taking. So we believe that globally we will unlock more innovation and scale and better processes. Then infrastructure also important, but there are a lot of players around the world. CJ has 9 plants across all continents, and there are several other fermentation partners that we could potentially use as an industry. And connecting to this, the partnerships are also important because it's not easy to scale up fast, and we want to create the biggest impact possible in the shortest time. So for us, it's not only important the partnerships on the production side, but also on the distribution side. And we know that we can reach a higher impact while working with others in the industry that have been working for centuries distributing ingredients.
Yeah, well said. This is something that we mentioned at the top of the episode or even before this call, that we've been looking at the space for quite some time, this, the world of consumer packaged goods. And we've been speaking to certain brands, and we have spoken with Pepsi and Frito-Lay. And then just, I think this week, they launched their new Simply Naked Doritos. Did you hear about that?
Yeah,
So
very exciting.
Yes. Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, they say the Cheetos and Doritos are from the same flavor, just not the color. They just removed the color. But I'm like, all right. And I think Carl too, and I don't know if you are, but we're Doritos connoisseurs. So I want to do a blind taste test between the colored Doritos and the naked ones and see if I can tell a difference. But it remains to be seen. But it's good, but then it's like color is so important because we get attracted to the food. It makes it more exciting. It adds to the flavor, I think. Just the eyes and the nose and the mouth, they all work together, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've tried it or seen the Simply Naked Doritos.
We eat with our eyes. They are super important. We relate the color to how nutritious a food is. For me, it's going to be hard to get rid of dyes in general, but we can produce dyes that fit the needs of the industry, that are more stable, that can be produced in a cost-efficient way or a scalable way, and still provide that beautiful color that the consumers want in their product. So I think there is a sweet spot where we can solve that need without getting rid of the colors.
Yeah, we definitely need colors in food. Just eat with your eyes. It's a great thing. So one more question before we go into our fun quickfire portion is, so now that Michroma has won the Future of Fungi Startup Award, how do you see this platform helping you accelerate your vision, whether it's credibility, partnerships, or more partnerships, more scaling, or opportunities to open new doors within the ecosystem?
I think it's all of them. It's credibility because in order to win the award, we went through a deep due diligence with experts in the fungal world, biotechnology worlds, and that also provides a community for us, scientists that understand the potential of our technology and can unlock or can help us unlock a challenge that we might have. Of course, visibility and being part of this show is thanks to the award. And so thank you so much. And we will get in front of many people, which is something hard to get as a startup, and we really appreciate it. And then connectivity is also important. The fungal innovation ecosystem is expanding very fast, and this platform helps us to build the partnerships that we need to scale. So it's a little bit more than recognition, which is great, but it's also a catalyst to us to leverage it and show our innovation to the world.
That's amazing. So we're going to go quickly into our quick fire questions. Erum and I will alternate asking these questions. We always say keep your answer short, but it's okay if you go long. But to get started, what's one impossible pigment that you want to grow next?
Fluorescent food grade pigment.
Wow.
Fluorescent. Amazing.
Wow. That, oof.
Yeah.
I mean, my mind's just blown. Okay. I don't even know if the answer asked the next question.
Erum has been dying for fluorescent hair dye.
Yes. Well, bioluminescence, there's a little difference there, but yes. Okay, cool. All right. So the most unexpected industry that's showed interest in Red Plus besides the food and beverage industry?
Aquafeed, very important for salmon and tilapia.
Oh, that's right. Is that the anthraxanthin? Is that what's being used today? Yeah.
That's an antioxidant that gets used to color the salmon flesh, I guess I can say. Yeah, that's amazing.
Especially when it's not grown in nature.
Yeah, because the salmon is white otherwise. And I think, there we
we
go,
want it
eat with your
red.
eyes. Yeah, who would eat white salmon?
Yeah,
We're basically eating tilapia.
If I caught it and cut it up myself, I would eat it. Okay, in one word, Ricky, fungi is equal to?
Future. The future is fungi.
Well said. You wrap that up nicely with a bow on it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Even though this was a short conversation, clearly you're growing. There's going to be more activities, more partnerships. We have so many questions to ask you. So as soon as we wrap this up, we're going to keep talking offline because we're so excited for you. But thank you again for coming on the Grow Everything podcast, and congratulations on the Futures Fungi Award.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure. I had a lot of fun, and I hope to do this soon again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That was a great episode with Ricky, and we'd love to introduce our next interview with Britta, who's the co-founder and CEO of Mycolever. She's pioneering the next generation of high-performance biocompounds powered by fungal biology. Before she started Mycolever, she was a co-founder of Formo, one of Europe's leading precision fermentation food biotechs, where she built and led a world-class research and development organization. She's a molecular biologist turned biotech builder, and we're super excited to have her come on and talk about Mycolever. Dr. Britta Winterberg, we're so happy to have you on the Grow Everything podcast for this special episode.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Tell our listeners about Mycolever. What is it that you make? And what was the moment where you realized that you could use fungi to replace petro, animal, or plant-derived ingredients without losing performance?
Yeah, so in general, at Mycolever, we discover, develop, and provide sustainable fungal biocompounds. So we are fascinated by fungal biodiversity and their capacity to produce so many different compounds. And that's what we want to tap into. We use fungi as a tool to produce products that can replace petrochemicals and unsustainable plant-derived compounds in cosmetics.
Amazing. Amazing. There's so much to unpack there because, we've had people on this podcast talking about creating new molecules from bacterial cellulose, but not necessarily mycelium or mushrooms as much. We did have Paul Shapiro of Better Meat Co. We actually did a replay of his episode where he's making mycoproteins. Can you share with our audience and describe a little bit about what your discovery plus fermentation plus scale up looks like? How do you go from fungal genome to the strain to a bio ingredient and that ends up in lotions or cosmetics, as you just mentioned?
On the one hand, we develop a bioinformatics platform, which allows us to connect fungal genomes with the products that they produce and then potential applications. So we look at the entire fungal biodiversity, so genomes that have been sequenced and biomining in those genomes to identify new and interesting compounds and how they can be used to replace unsustainable ingredients. And then what we do is we grow these fungi, very similar to brewing, I guess, and then extract the compounds that they produce. So the first compound that we've got is an emulsifier. So it's a small molecule called a glycolipid. So it has the ability to bring oil and water together. And every cream, every lotion that we use has exactly these two components that need to be mixed. And so that's what our fungus produces and that we can use then to bring into the cosmetics industry, but also into other industries, because emulsifiers are widely used in personal care, in home care, in food, agriculture, you name it.
That's amazing. In the race for sustainability, companies can compromise on performance. Have you had to make any trade-offs at Mycolever? Or if so, how do you design around them to keep both sustainability and quality?
The good thing about working with fungi is that the compounds are inherently sustainable because we use plant ingredients or like sugars and oil to feed our organism, and then it just by itself produces these compounds or this glycolipid. So we don't necessarily have to compromise when it comes to the production during fermentation. However, the standard protocols for our compound and to purify it would involve a lot of organic solvents to get rid of anything else that the fungus might have produced during the fermentation process. So that's exactly what we looked at first. How can we reduce the amount of organic solvents that we need without compromising on the quality of the product? So keeping the purity of the compound at the same level and the functionality the same as if we were to use the standard protocols.
So what does that mean from a downstream processing point of view? What does it take to go from growing the fungi to ending up with your final product if you're not having to use organic solvents to clean them up, I guess is the way I would put it?
We looked at alternative methods to purify them. I don't want to go too much into detail because it's still in the early stages. But we looked at where can we reduce the amount of solvents that we use? Where can we simplify the purification processes with more natural applications?
Yeah. And so as a leader of a startup, of course, you're managing product, making sure you get that optimized, better than business as usual product out there. And you mentioned that this can replace some other emulsifiers, providing similar performance. And you're also managing the business side. So I'm curious to know, as you talk to industry, what kind of resistance or skepticism do you encounter? And how do you handle that when you're saying, oh, this is an alternative, performs the same, but it's different? So how do you handle those industry level conversations?
That's an interesting question because, the first thing that we are always asked is, what's the price? So we compete with petrochemical ingredients. scaled for decades now, really cheap feedstock, unfortunately, and not priced on the impact that they have. I mean, that's a big challenge. However, we are in this lucky position that our emulsifier isn't a commodity chemical, especially when it goes into cosmetics products, because what we see is that its structure is very similar to ceramides. So it's actually more than just one ingredient of many. It's the emulsifier, and then it also has what we call active functionalities.
Yeah, so it's not just drop-in, it's what exists plus some performance. So, not only is it going to replace, but it's going to enhance the products that already exist out there in the world of cosmetics and personal care.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that people don't necessarily understand about bio-based products, that they do often have these functionalities that can be leveraged. So you could actually decrease what's on a label based on the functionality of this product or the ingredient. But beyond cosmetics and personal care, where do you see your compounds being used, maybe in unexpected sectors?
Yeah, one interesting project that we have together with a manufacturer of frozen baked goods is to see whether we can apply this emulsifier to stabilize whipped cream. So that's an interesting application far outside the cosmetics industry.
That's so fun.
How did you come up with that? Did someone approach you, or did you put something out there? Were you at a conference? How did that idea arise? It's really interesting.
Yeah, that came through our network. It was initiated by a university, and they were bringing together partners in an open innovation program. So yeah, super interesting project that we've got running there.
Before we get into our quickfire questions, I was hoping that Britta, you could maybe give our listeners some background, because you are a serial entrepreneur. What's your background and how did you end up starting this company?
Yeah, I'm a biologist by training. I did my PhD in Germany at the Max Planck Institute in Marburg, and then moved to Australia to work at the Australian National University for many years as a postdoc. And throughout all these years, I worked with fungal microorganisms because I'm simply intrigued by what they can do and the compounds that they produce and how they interact with their environment. And I somehow thought I would follow this academic path. So that was kind of like the route that I was foreseeing. And then in 2019, I diverted from this idea very sharply and became co-founder of a startup called Formo Bio. They produce animal feed dairy proteins. And I was so intrigued by this idea that I can use my very, well, let's face it, nerdy and slightly academic skill set and apply it to something that is tangible and really has an impact. Yeah, after leaving the company a few years later, I decided now is the time to follow my passion for fungal microorganisms. And that's how the idea for Mycolever was born. And now I have an amazing team. I have an amazing co-founder who took this crazy scientific idea to an actual viable business. And then together with our team, we make it work.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, wonderful. And so you're based in Germany, and I assume in Europe that this concept of using fungal microorganisms to make these materials is a bit more accepted. Have you talked to companies in the United States? Have you seen a difference between how American companies react to your products versus European companies?
I couldn't say that there's a detectable difference. I think it's more US and Europe are still a bit hesitant sometimes, whereas in Asia, fermentation is so common. You find so many cosmetic products in Korea and Japan that contain ingredients that are based on fermentation. And I see this as a trend reaching Europe and the US in the next couple of years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, have you gone to Korea to examine all those different products out there? Because we're so curious.
Not to Korea just yet. Definitely on my bucket list.
Yes. Yeah. That's a wonderful insight that you shared, because we've been hearing about Korean beauty products. I went to a few stores, tried some out. And why does Korea have all the fun? Why don't we have the fun of using microorganisms and fermentation for our skincare and beauty here? So thanks for spreading the love. We really appreciate that. So Britta, you mentioned the emulsifier product, but you also have another product, which is a type of beauty oil. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yes, that's our range of fermented high-value beauty oils, which we call Famea. So in that case, we take, for example, argan oil or rosehip oil, we feed it to our fungus, and it digests it and metabolizes it and makes it even better. So they are enhanced beauty oils with antioxidative functions, so a bit of anti-aging function there. They also contain the emulsifier, so an easier spreadable, better absorbed smell nicely. So yeah, even better than the unfermented oils.
Wow, that's incredible. I could see a super product being created through all of your compounds. So amazing work.
And you said that you guys have gone to hundreds of liter scale. Is that correct?
Hundreds is probably a bit exaggerating. 100 liters. Sorry, I probably
100,
exaggerated a
100.
bit. But we are preparing to move into the cubic meter scale. So.
Oh, guys, there's so many other questions I have, but we have a lot of fungal experts on this episode. But before we go, we have some quick fire questions that we want to ask. So I'm happy to kick them off, Karl. And here we go. Okay, so if you could engineer fungi to solve one global problem, what would it be?
I would pick a fungus which I would call a carbon alchemist. So a fungus that can kind of drink CO2, sever any kind of side stream we give it, and turns it into platform chemicals to replace petrochemicals.
Wow, that was very beautifully put, I have to say. That was very beautifully put. I want to, that's very poetic.
What's the biggest myth about fungal biotech that maybe you hear all the time?
I think many consumers perceive fungi as a mushroom, a stem and a head, like a button mushroom that we eat. There's so many out there. There's an estimated 5.1 million different fungus species. So yeah, there's an endless wealth of organisms.
Yeah. My whole thing is, fungus, are the spores? Can they create mold? Can they take over my brain? Just like the show The Last of Us,
nasty ones, and then become a zombie. That's the ones we're not interested in. Or they might know fungi from beer brewing, but there's so many out there. There's an estimated 5.1 million different fungus species. So yeah, there's an endless wealth of organisms.
It's a big world out there, people. Fungi can do a lot of things, which we're talking about on this episode. Okay, and so now this is more close to home. Can you share a lab win you secretly celebrated this year?
We don't celebrate secretly. We do it with pride.
Nice.
Inside the team. No, we were really excited when we scaled our bioprocess protocols to several hundred liters. So that's a big milestone for a startup.
Very big.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious, what does winning this Future Fungi Award mean for you and the organization?
Well, the network, spreading the word, spreading the love for fungi.
Yes. It makes it all more acceptable, and you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there that we're going to be speaking with, and I want to have you back on the pod as things develop so we can see how you're growing and, some more airtime, because these are our snippets, a little teaser of fungi companies. We really appreciate having you on the Grow Everything podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Britta. I really appreciate it.
Hey, this episode is sponsored by Messaging Lab. At Messaging Lab, we translate complex science and economics into compelling business narratives. And we have done so for the most successful biotech-forward companies across pharma, agriculture, personal care and beauty, materials, and the list goes on. We're here to make sure your ideas not only get heard, but resonate with your audience. So if it's time to amplify your company's voice and elevate your business, visit us at messaginglab.com. Let's grow. Wow, Karl, that was a jam-packed episode with 3 interviews in one. We're on the other side of it, and I cannot believe all the innovation in biology that we just talked about. What do you think of these episodes?
I feel like each one of them deserves to be its own episode. We've been fans of Susanne for a long time, huge fans of Ricky Cassini, and now I'm a huge fan of Britta as well. I didn't know her before. She was a runner-up to this. And I think overall, we've just scratched the surface of the power of fungi. We've had lots of conversations offline, but the ideas around this award just blew my mind. What did you think, Erum?
Yeah, absolutely. I was happy that we finally had a chance to do this because I've met Susanne, like I mentioned, at BioFab Fair, and then when she came to New York City, and she had this amazing event at the Altru Institute. It was like a rooftop conversation about fungi and regenerative products during Climate Week. It was like the last day of Climate Week, so it was a beautiful experience. And I just continue learning so much about how we can leverage fungi. And thanks to Susanne, I mean, we had deep conversations before where we talked about what exactly is fungi and how was it introduced to humans and our first experiences with them. I can't help but think about shrooms. Everyone talks about that. Woo, here we go. Gives you psychedelic experience. Why? How does it do that? Why do fungi hold those properties for us to experience something like that? And then, of course, all the other things from food to ingredients to therapeutics to batteries. I was like, what, Susanne? Are you kidding me? Like, you can make batteries out of fungi? I was like, you could just make anything out of fungi. But now we have another platform here. Like, we talk about platform technologies, fungi, bacteria, algae. Here we go. Grow everything, right? So I love that part of it. Susanne was great.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention the fact that we did a replay with Paul Shapiro of Better Meat Co. And Paul is doing, a mycelium-based protein that he's been able to scale up production of. And there's huge interest from consumers in the health benefit of mushrooms, particularly things like reishi and lion's mane. And there's a whole list of these mushrooms that people are taking for health benefits. So I am excited about the future is fungi and what we will see from the space, because I think there's a lot of room for innovation. We're just at the beginning of it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And then, I mean, to have Ricky come on of Michroma, and he definitely talked about scale as a word that he used regularly to triple underscore the fact that this isn't just a science project, that this is an actual solution that can be used to replace petrochemical-based dyes in our food. Call up Ricky, call up Michroma. If you are making foods using artificial dyes, stop that immediately and call Ricky.
Well, and it's not just stop it immediately, it's being legislated out of existence.
Yeah.
So the United States is following Europe's lead in terms of a lot of these, red dye in particular, a lot of these dyes that have neurological effects are being legislated out of foods. And so there's a huge opportunity for these people producing dyes with mycelium, like what Ricky is doing. And I think Ricky and his company are way ahead of everybody else in terms of getting to scale. And I'm sure they have huge interest from all these companies that are looking for colors, because as you said on the pod, you eat with your eyes first, then with your nose, and then it hits your mouth. So what it looks like and the color has to be pleasant. So huge opportunity for these mycelium color producers.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually at a restaurant this past weekend, and they had tri-colored tortilla chips because I got the queso. I'm a big fan of queso. Must be the Philly in me, because I love cheesesteaks. And I love Cheese Whiz. But I don't eat that often because it's not good for you. But anyway, the tri-colored tortilla chips, they were like bright red and then blue. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Is it blue? I mean, I just assumed it was blue corn tortilla chips. But then when I saw the red ones, I'm like, there are not bright red corn out there. So this must be dyed. And it was like the same color red as the Cheetos, hot Cheetos. I don't even know if they're called anymore. It was super red. And like, they were beautiful to look at. I wasn't like, it was so fun to have those types of chips. So I was like, because part of me is, yeah, fine, phase out the dyes. It's to phase it out. But then what's going to replace it? I love the fact that Ricky was talking about glowing fluorescent colors. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
What are those, Monster drinks or Ecto Cooler? Those came out.
It shows up in the bad Netflix series Biohacker, I think is what it was called. And there was a party they threw and they had the glowing beer, which, I think is probably relatively easy to do. But very excited for what Ricky is doing. And of course, what Britta's doing too, because we know and we hear it from our friends in the CPG industry, people are looking for biosurfactants, bioemulsifiers. And so I think she's solving a huge problem. And again, many of these kinds of things are being legislated out, and people are looking for labels that show clean ingredients. So it makes sense to have a biological replacement that comes from fungi or other means. But very excited for what Britta is doing. So I think this was a great episode.
Yes. Wonderful episode. It really did a great job of wrapping up our unofficial mycelium month, I guess you can say. Kicking off with our replay with Paul Shapiro and then Laura Menard of GOB. And then here we have The Future is Fungi. Next week's episode is going to be with Aradita, who is the founder of Cell Sense, and they make embellishments for clothing using bacterial cellulose, but perhaps you could use fungi. I don't know. I mean, we already recorded the episode with her, but it's something that we can all think about everything that touches our lives, how can it be made with different types of living things? And that's what we talk about here on Grow Everything. So thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned to our next episode. And please reach out to us. We love hearing from our listeners, whether it's positive or negative, whether it's getting someone on the podcast or just asking a question about what's going on in the world of biology and how we can bring it to the people. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Please watch, listen, like, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We're having a lot of success there, and we'd love to see more of you there. Thank you for listening. That's the episode.
End scene.